Welcome to our Priestess Circle. I'm your host and High Priestess Clarity Barton, and for this new moon in Taurus, I invite Sister Sylvia Eng to share her wisdom with us. In this episode, Sylvia talks about sacred kink and how intentionally exploring sexual practices of kink can be healing and expansive for our growth. Sylvia is a Sacred Kink mentor and educator whose focus is on assisting her clients to journey into kink for self-love and to enhance their self-awareness, pleasure, and healing. After the discussion, Sylvia will guide a positive affirmation binding practice that will help you experience kink on your own and ground self-love messages in your body. I hope that you receive tons of blessings from this discussion and practice. The circle is now open. Welcome to your New Moon Priestess Circle. And welcome, Sylvia. Thank you so much, sister, for accepting to be on this podcast. I feel like I'm always asking you to come forward and to share your wisdom because there's so much interesting things that can happen with Sacred Kink, and you're one of the only mentors that I know that have so much experience around it and that is able to share all of that so eloquently with others. So thank you for doing that for us today with this new moon in Taurus for self-love and self-nourishment.
Thank you for having me. It's my favorite topic, so I'm very excited for today.
I was wondering if we can start by just introducing the idea of sacred kink versus regular kink. How would you define that for us?
That's a great question. So I think the main way that I separate the two in my mind, because I have had most of my years not in the sacred kink practice, and it was a mind shift, a purposeful mind shift to switch into the realm of sacred. And so I really think it has a lot to do about intentionality and education. So knowing the power that kink can have, and then being an active and conscious participant in that, and delving deeper into your shadow work and seeing where the two can line up with each other for yourself, but also if you're in partnership and practicing this with a partner.
So the main difference that I hear is the intention and the healing component, kind of going into it, knowing that it's going to be transformative for us.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of healing can happen unconsciously, but a lot of damage could happen unconsciously in kink as well. So if we aren't mindful and if we don't give kink the full credit and sort of power that it deserves, we can unintentionally deepen a wound. So when we switch and educate ourselves and become much more conscious about it, then that's where the pathway to healing can happen.
I'm really excited to dive deeper into the examples so that you can help us clarify a little bit how healing can occur and how to prevent more damages from happening. But first, I wanted to know a little, to let others know more about you and your journey. So how did you come about Sacred Kink and just stepping into kink in general? How was that for you?
Yeah, kink for me has been something that's been present in my life since I became a sexual being. I guess it kind of came along hand in hand. But it wasn't something that I was seeking out purposefully. It was just something I was exposed to and I thought was really interesting. I love people watching. That was sort of where it started for me, which also is a kink as a voyeur, I guess. But for me, I was just very fascinated being exposed to it and seeing all the different relationship dynamics. And I think the first part of the conscious kink that came for me was seeing the love stories of the people I was witnessing, because I would think, oh, wow, how did these two people find each other with such like specific interests and the really beautiful polarity and like beautiful openness, the dialogue that must have happened for that act that I was witnessing, because it's not something you can just fall into accidentally. Would have had to be something that during their courting process they would have had to talk to each other about and be very vulnerable and open And I was like, this is a kind of a love story that I'm very interested in experiencing and having. And I just really like talking about this stuff. And I had mentors myself. And then through my journey with Clarity in the Priestess trainings, I really felt strongly that the role of the mentor was something that knitted so well with the work that I was doing, the healing work that I was doing. And I realized, the role of the mentor that I had when I was coming up doesn't really exist anymore. The internet is where people will go to now and kind of like Google things. And when I was telling people, like, oh, this might be something that you want to look into, they would Google it and come back to me. And I was horrified with what they found, because I was like, no, that's porn and that's like misogyny and that's violence. That's not what we're talking about. But it's not accessible to have good examples. And that's why traditionally the role of the mentor did exist. And so I became very passionate in stepping into that role for people, because I didn't want them to have the curiosity and then end up in the depths of the internet and the dangers and the grossness that can come with that. I wanted them to have that curiosity nurtured and handheld and hold their hands. And so I've often said, like, I feel like my role is sort of somewhere between a librarian and your big sister. So somebody who you can come to for good, credible information, but also, to just make it lighthearted and fun and safe and open. So that there's a sense that's the role the mentor usually would play, bringing you into the dungeon. The mentor, she would keep you safe and help you learn the rules and the etiquette involved and guide you and hold your hand and vet you as well, so that you weren't doing damage or danger to other people who you were playing with in that space. So I am able to do that sort of digitally and help people just by being their guide.
Yes, I had some sessions with you as a Sacred Kink mentor, and I can testify that it's this perfect balance between helping us to explore our hidden desires with these tests, these quizzes that you invite us to take, which are illuminating and just illuminating all aspects of our self, of our psyche that we didn't really know of before. And then this coach as to how to apply these findings in a way that's really intentional and safe and sacred. Yeah, it's a combination of the big sister and the mom a bit. Like, you're so sweet and nurturing, but also kind of witty and fun. And it's like a fun topic, right? To explore these like hidden desires in ourselves. So I very much loved your coaching sessions. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about what people might experience from them. Like, what is the kind of journey that you can lead someone through?
Yeah, there's a lot of different types of journeys, and I think it really depends on what's absolutely customized. So as Clarity mentioned, I usually open up by doing the quizzes. So we do a love language quiz, a kink quiz, and also the erotic blueprint quiz. And with those three quizzes, for me, I feel almost like an astrologer, where I will look at the results of those three quizzes, and they're like your big three, your sun, moon, and rising. And I'll get a good idea how they play with each other. And I'll start to just say, hey, did you ever think about this? Or have you had experience with bondage? What do you feel about submission? And we just sort of pick through the results in a conversation that's customized to you and sort of the viewpoint into your psyche that I get from the quizzes. And so it can start as basic as that, where you don't know anything about yourself or this topic. Or I've also worked with couples who, for example, they want to increase their polarity with each other. And so it's very difficult for somebody who maybe is a feminine, who is in her masculine all the time, running businesses, and she's having difficulty perhaps playing a submissive role in her relationship, although she has a yearning to do that. when we feel that way, it can be really difficult to say, oh, I want you to dominate me this way. So sometimes a mentor can come into a couple's relationship and help um, give voice and give language to the submissive's desires, so that she or he doesn't have to be the one to specifically ask or direct it in the act, and they can stay more, it's easier for them to then stay in their act of submission so that they don't have to come out to ask for leadership. Consent and dialogue are very important parts of kink, but sometimes in the act, in order to stay in the zone that you're hoping to cultivate, it can be really helpful to have the mentor guiding the dominant as like a co-dominant as well, to go through those experiences. And like, I don't want people to be confused. That doesn't mean I'm coming into your bedroom to do that, but it just means I'm helping the new dominant with their language, with their posture, with the act of tying perhaps, and just all these different things, helping them to read the room, read the submissive, teaching and coaching them. So that's a much more kind of advanced level. So the whole spectrum is possible.
I hear that you're creating this container so that people can play within.
Yeah.
Within that strong container with those tools, right? Especially the language, the boundaries, the exploration, the quizzes, etc. So very helpful. And what I'm hearing as well is this polarity, and I find that this is something that we find a lot in kink, the domination, the submission. And for me, it reflects the polarities of the masculine feminine, which is just the base of all polarity. And I'm wondering how someone can work on either of these polarities, because a lot of people are looking to connect more with their feminine, connect more with their masculine. So how could you coach someone to work more on their feminine or masculine with kink, for example?
Yeah, this is a really great question because we have a tendency when we want to deepen our polarity to project that onto our partner and say, well, if my partner was more the opposite polarity of me, then I could be the polarity I wish I was. But in actual fact, we have to deepen that polarity within ourselves first. Um, and it's not the responsibility of our partner. So a lot of my practice also is about a self practice. I do work majority with people one on one and less so with couples, because the practice really needs to start within yourself. So we've talked before. I could give some examples about different ways that if you want to embody your submissive or your strong feminine polarity, that you do that within yourself, within your day to day. And it's about self care. It's about the way that you self pleasure. It's about how you walk through your life. It's about the affirmations practices that we're about to do. And there are several different practices, but they all begin with oneself first.
Hmm. So, for example, for someone who would want to connect to their masculine, how could they prepare themselves to get into this role if that's not something that they're used to? And that could be a man or a woman.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
One of the ways that I think works really well, and people are very shy about it, but it's very effective, is that you have an honorific that lies only within the context of this role that you're deepening. So people think, oh, that means like I'm putting on an act or I'm acting, but it all plays a part. What you wear, the scent that you put on, the way that you style your hair, how you want to be referred to, your tone of voice, they all go together in embodying and deepening the practice of the polarity that you want to embody. So yeah, there's so many, there's a wide range, but obviously there's different archetypes that lie within that we can use titles for. So like we have God and goddess, we have master and slave, we have sir and student, we have daddy and baby girl, and we have mommy and baby boy, and like all of these different polarities are places that you can play within as a couple, but also as yourself, and see which one you feel you want to nurture more and which one you want to see expressed.
So we're using costumes and names to help strengthen our embodiment of these polarities. And so for the masculine, it would be entering the more dominant role, which I hate to say that because I feel like in our society, equating masculine with dominant is kind of
Well, another way that you
reawakening the patriarchal wound. But actually,
yes.
can be also a very healing role. We're just not used to seeing the dominating role as something healing.
Yes, domination can be something that's triggering for people. So I also encourage to think of it like leader and follower, or the one who holds the container and the one who fills the container. So there's so many ways beyond what we stereotypically think of as a way that we can feel and hold, and that would all be about how you want to embody the masculine. There's the one way we see, but there's so many ways, and I think that's one of the vehicles that kink is so beautiful as is it shows many different ways that can be embodied.
And can you tell us a little bit how it was for you to enter this more leadership, to not say dominating, this leadership role in those this sexual sacred kink context? What did that evoke for you, or how did that transform you? In what way was it healing for you to play these roles?
Yeah, for me, one of the ways that it was very healing was I had a mistrust of partnership and masculine. And so unconsciously, I was naturally falling into leadership as a way to be self-protective and not vulnerable. So it started off not conscious at all, which is why I've said like this has been a lifelong journey for me, and realizing as well that I definitely was practicing in a way that was sort of fulfilling my own toxic masculine. I got a lot of joy and pleasure out of, being a little bit of a bully and getting my way all the time. But that did transition over time to being more asking for my own pleasure, being able to receive exclusively without having the sort of preconditioned expectation that like you've done this, now I've done that, and being able to really sit back and hold space in receiving. And also it was really healing for me in my body image as well, because I really felt um, I really felt my most beautiful when I had my leathers and my lace on. And one of the roles I really like to play is the Joker. I do a feminine version of the Joker. And I feel so beautiful when I have my Joker makeup on and my hair done up and my blazers, and just I adore the way that he takes care of his girl. And he would burn down the village, the whole city, to protect his Harley Quinn. So I really did start to see how, even though he is portrayed as like the toxic masculine, there are ways that we can identify that the reason that he behaves toxically is because of love for his true love for his divine feminine. And it helped me to forgive myself for some of the violent or dangerous or not so proud moments I had in my toxic masculine, to understand like where he was coming from is also where I was coming from, that I did it out of love, and give that self forgiveness to myself.
I love this work with archetypes. It resonates so much because I work with archetypes a lot. And I don't know how the Joker came for you, but for me, I go into meditations and they come, or in dreams they come, and they're really revealing certain aspects of myself that are usually a bit hidden and taboo, sort of lays in the shadow, and they're coming up to be expressed and reclaimed. So I love how kink can be a means to do that.
Yeah, it was really beautiful to have these parts of myself that I've always had, and that I've always used to protect my vulnerable self and my inner child. The Joker archetype has always been there, and to give him voice and to celebrate him and to have other people lust after that piece of me that previously was shamed, that I was too rough around the edges or whatever it may be, and to really bring that piece of me to the forefront to be worshipped is absolutely so healing. So much so that I don't really live in the Joker as much anymore. I'm going through a personal transition myself into understanding and accepting submission, which has been even more challenging.
So tell us a little bit about that, because I feel like with the Joker we explore a bit more the masculine and the leadership role of coming into, I want to say, the queen as well, like
Hmm.
the deity that is worshipped and worthy and receiving of devotion, but at the same time, the true receptive role is that of the person who's completely surrendering. And so, how are you working on your? Is it correct to say like your less dominant? How do you say like the submissive, your submissive role?
Yeah, I still even struggle to like claim myself as a submissive. So it's fair that you're also struggling to put that role or that title on me because I don't yet embody it. So it makes me very like squirmy and giggly still to think that that the Joker is going to submit to somebody. But the process the process sort of was a transition from that kind of sneaky, toxic, masculine, playful figure into the role of a dominant queen. So yeah, that was sort of the journey I'm going through, the arc, and now into somebody who's taken care of and is sort of the little bit of age play there. I feel like the submissive role is going back to a time period when I was about 17, and sort of that was a time period in my life where things became very difficult. I had to do everything on my own. I was living by myself at 17. So it's a chance for me to go back to that time period and be taken care of in a way that I wasn't accessible to me at that time, the first time around. So it is laced with triggers and all sorts of things. But every time one of them comes up and comes to the light and to the sunshine, like I get that much more healing. But I am, because of that, I've been like very much tiptoeing through that journey. And so some of the things that I've been in practice, I was sharing with you last time, was that I went to a yoni massage seminar, which lasted 6 hours. And there was about 4 hours straight of receiving on my end, where I just had to not talk and just do my tantric breath and focus on my body and just really be embodied and focus on myself. And for some people, that might sound like a beautiful, amazing, relaxing retreat. But for me, it was a struggle every minute to not say, give direction or to, you know, to just be present and to surrender to the feelings that were happening and to be held by both my partner and a facilitator, and that was very vulnerable. And so yeah, I'm doing the work along with you guys. I never want you to feel that there's some sort of like division where I'm just a teacher. Like I definitely feel that the fact that I'm doing the work also makes me a really great mentor because I share the experience with you.
And from my experience of listening to so many women talk about their sexuality and their life in my women circles, I know that you're not alone in that experience. A lot of women are used to being in control in that leadership role, in the more masculine role, also very much in their head. And it's really hard for them to go into the feminine. And for me, an archetype that helps is the little girl, just like you mentioned, your teenager. For me, going back even further to feel how my little girl is able to receive and be nurtured, and she's needing of that love, right? Because she's still so innocent and powerless, but not in like a disempowered way, more in like a very receptive, innocent way that is worthy of care and love. So I feel like I can embody that when I'm in my feminine, and I can also see how that these archetypes would be the parts of us that do hold a lot of woundings, of trauma that needs to be transformed before we can fully go into them and reclaim them for our pleasure, but we can use pleasure also to reclaim them. So yeah, sexual energy is really such a powerful way to transform our psyche with these archetypes. And I love that you're doing this work.
Yeah, that time period is very powerful for many women because it's a time when society taught us in so many ways, verbally or non-verbally, what our sexuality was allowed to be and what it wasn't allowed to be, if it was allowed to be expressed, or all sorts of things really changed for us at that time. And those are some of the things that, as grown women, we're working now to undo and to change that dialogue in ourselves. And so it can be so helpful to go back to where the message began.
One big difference also between regular kink and conscious kink, or I don't know, perhaps it also exists in the regular kink scene, is the idea of aftercare. And I feel like that pertains to what we're talking about also with being in the submissive role. So tell us a little bit more about aftercare and how that's really important to really use kink for healing.
Yeah, you're right. In the mainstream kink, we don't see aftercare. If it's happening, it's definitely not in the porn video. It might be happening with the actors after the fact, but it tends to not be represented in media, that's for sure. Although aftercare has been something that we've known is important and it exists alongside kink through history, it's been sort of written out of the mainstream media. So we're also learning right now how important it is for aftercare for both parties that might be involved. Typically, aftercare was associated only with the submissive to help them heal from the vulnerability that they have gone through. But we're really learning more now about how important it is for the dominant or the leader to have aftercare as well, because they hold the container. It's similar to anybody who's led circle, and you can do a lot by opening up and holding space and holding container, and it's incredibly motivating and powerful for yourself. But if you don't give yourself the self-care after you've held space for other people, whether it be in circle or like even your own children, we get depleted, and we can also live with compounding trauma that doesn't get addressed if we don't do aftercare on both sides. The type of aftercare is going to really depend specific to that couple and like what, or that individual even, and what helps and heals that person. But common things are like having a bath and tending to oneself. For myself, a lot of the aftercare is very verbal. That's because I have a words of affirmation in my love language, but very common to have a lot of affirmations about, oh, you did such a good job and you did so good. You were so brave, such a good girl. And, lots of head rubs and just a lot of affirmations, physical and verbal, about how extraordinary it is that you gave into this experience and you opened up and you were vulnerable, because so many times in life we're vulnerable and we try to open up and we're not necessarily praised or rewarded, and could even be giving a negative response when we've done that. So we're really focusing on praising and affirming how special and amazing and brave it was that we did this with each other, or we did this for ourselves.
I can see how aftercare would be really important to not go back into trauma for the person. I think that's definitely one of the means to transform an experience that could otherwise be re-triggering for us into an experience that's healing because of that intention in the container. So tell us maybe some about some other ways that we can prevent this re-traumatization from happening.
It's very difficult and it's very tricky. There are many times that you're going to stumble upon re-traumatization and it's nobody's fault. So my mentor, who I follow, she calls them oopsies and ouchies. So the point is not that you never have them, but that when you come across them, that you do look at it as an opportunity to maybe rewrite the scenario and give yourself a new ending to this old trauma, to play it out in a different way this time, or to just say, oh, that's too hot for me right now. I'm going to red flag that. We're going to stop. we previously consented to this, but now we're pulling the safe word, and we've gone too far into that, and we're maybe never going to revisit it again, or maybe we're going to do a lot of work outside of this and try revisiting it again in the future. But now we know, okay, that's like a hot spot over there. And sometimes for myself, especially, I've noticed I don't even know where my hot spots are sometimes. And so it can be incredibly helpful to reach that point and just know, oh, I have a hot spot there. Oh, that's crazy. One of the things that was a hot spot for me was uh, not being able to move or being tied. I didn't think I had an issue with that. I didn't think there was any issues. And then when the opportunity arose, it felt really fun. And then all of a sudden it did not feel fun at all. And so now I'm thinking more about, okay, what might have happened that's become a negative feeling for me? Where did that happen in the past? And sort of digging deeper into my own knowledge. And then also when I want to go near that hot spot again, is there a way I can do it lightly? Is there a way I can still have control to separate with Velcro, or, where I can feel held but still have the control? And so you work around it slowly. And I think just the most important thing to know is that it's okay if you hit one of those hot spots. It doesn't mean that anybody did it wrong or that they were intending to hurt you. And you really need to have a lot of communication with yourself, with your partner, to say and to make amends when those things happen. I think that's something I learned interesting that relates to parenting, is they say that you don't want to be a perfect parent. You can be a bad parent up to 70% of the time, as long as you repair every time. And so that's a lot of the work that we're doing in kink as well, is that it's not we're avoiding the mistakes, is that we're making sure that we do the repair.
So talk us through a kink session, like a conscious kink session. How would that look like if two people were to come together intentionally to practice sacred kink?
This is such a hard question because I think it's so vast. But one of the things I would definitely say is, I know this is controversial, but I don't think that this work should be done with casual partners. I think it's incredibly important that this is done with a lot of thought and care and trust. However, that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen with casual partners every day of the year. So I think it really starts with a conversation, sharing your quiz results with somebody who you feel safe with and who has agreed that they want to do this work with you. Because I feel like initially, if you approach a partner, they're like, yeah, I want to do that. That sounds really hot. It totally is. But it's very important that you are both on the same page about the intention, that this is an intention for healing through hot, sexy fun. That it's a vehicle. The vehicle is hot and sexy, but the practice is a healing practice together. So if you wouldn't go to therapy with this person, I wouldn't say that you should do sacred kink with this person.
I totally agree. People also think that tantric massages are hot and sexy. And they're actually all like slow, emotional, and just super deep and energetic. Like it's really not about pleasure. Pleasure can happen, but most of the time, yeah, we're going into the genitals and like those body parts and acknowledging the whole body as beautiful. But the process is so gentle and so intentional, and it's quite boring actually when especially if you have the expectation that it's going to be playful and sexy, you might be really disappointed. So i I find it interesting that you said that don't practice that with a casual partner, because for me, it's almost the opposite. Like with my regular partners, I tend to not want to give them tantric massages so much because it's so intentional and so not for pleasure. And I don't want to be their therapist. So actually having someone else and coming into that session as a therapist, some professional who can offer healing, actually helps me to have these clear boundaries as to who is who. So that's just like my take
Yeah.
on that.
I definitely appreciate your take. And I think that's probably also possible. That's why I said it's definitely a controversial viewpoint I have. I think that there are many amazing professionals available as well. And I think one of the things I hope to teach people as well is that if you don't have a partner you feel ready to access this with, that's totally fine. And a professional may be a really great solution for you. However, a lot more of this work can be done with yourself than you think.
Where I do totally agree is that it's really hard to find people that you fully trust. And so your partner usually will be the closest person that you fully trust into these kind of practices. And a second point too is the exchange of energy. It's so intimate to go into these spaces with people. And so you really want to make sure that you're okay receiving energy from that person, and that you also trust this person to hold your energy, whatever is moving through you in that moment. As we saw, it can be a lot of things, and wounds and emotions and trauma, as much as orgasms and pleasure. So yeah, for that trust to happen, I think it's really beautiful if you can have your partner, that kind of sacred container of partnership, or someone that you feel fully, yeah, safe with to go into that experience with. So, Sylvia, tell us a little bit about the kind of kinks that are out there, because there's some that we obviously know of, the domination parts, the masochistic and sadistic. But there's a quiz that you invite us to take that lists tons of other kinks that I didn't even know existed. So, can you illuminate us on these and how these could maybe be explored on your own instead of with a partner?
Yeah, definitely. So there's sort of a vast umbrella, which are the initials of BDSM, which is B is bondage, D is domination, S is submission, and M is masochism. There, we did them all. So that's the overall umbrella. The expression of each of those four things can come in lots of different ways. So, for example, I kind of think of it as like tree branches. So over here, you might have something completely unique. Let's say you like feet and whipped cream together. If you follow that trail backwards, it can go, oh, that you really enjoy legs and stockings. Oh, that the legs and stockings is a symbolism of strong, powerful women. And so it comes under the umbrella of submission for you. Or you may have another branch of the same tree where it's like you really like stiletto heels. You like the pain of stiletto heels stepping on you, which comes back to powerful women, which could come back to stockings, which could come back to masochism. So, as much as the branch could have every leaf under the sun, you can sort of follow the trail backwards to find what is sort of the root for it. So sometimes something that might sound really out there and unique has a root that is very common and is sort of linking back to these healings and traumas, and sometimes they're just the ability to express something like that, because many people who are doing this healing work, one of the healing aspects is being able to say, I like stockings and I want to be able to say that out loud, and I want to be heard and seen and not ridiculed or feel bad about this thing that I really like. And so the branches are so vast, it's very difficult to go in it. But one of the things that we definitely do one on one is if you get a score that you, with a word that you weren't that familiar with, then we do kind of trace this pathway backwards for you to see where the root of it might have come from, and what desire or trauma or healing is linked to that. So yeah, there's a lot of terms I think that we went through. Predator and prey was one that I was really surprised actually how common that was coming up, because I would have said that was a little bit less common, but it was very prevalent in our women's circle that we did. Everybody was loving that one, which is the idea of being chased and desired, and the idea of running but then submitting, and that kind of back and forth with the polarity. Another one that we got a lot, comes up quite a bit, but people don't know the term, is rigor and rope bunny. So the rope bunny is the one who enjoys being tied, and the rigger is the one who enjoys the tying. um, what else did we have? We had we had the financial one, and there's a financial dominant, so someone who dominates using finances as a symbol for the person's submission. And the opposite of the financial dominant is the pay pig. So there's many of these sort of like slang terms associated, which come through the test. But again, there's a lot of ways that we can soften and change the language and personalize the language so that it feels comfy and cozy for the people who are using it. They don't always appreciate some of the slang that's come out of the pornography industry, but
And I'm curious also about exploring these tree branches in the other way. If you know that you're very much wanting to go into your submissive, looking at all the options to experience your submissive role. And for me, kink is also about going to your edges and kind of expanding your comfort zone. So yeah, just all these different options probably help us to develop this comfort in those different areas of our life with our finances, also the voyeurism
voyeurism, yeah,
and
and yeah.
exhibitionism too, which can be really interesting to tap into, especially for body love, for example. If someone's not used to being seen because they're ashamed of their body, that could be an area of expansion to explore.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you mentioned that, because sometimes our exploration comes from the tippy tips of the branches down into the roots, and other times we explore from the root outward, and both are very common.
And there's a lot of ways to do these things on our own as well. So can you tell us some examples of that?
Yeah, definitely. So, thinking a little bit more about the body love that you mentioned, being naked with yourself, being exposed to yourself, is a great way to start that experience. And there's a lot of safe ways that you can do that as well, by going to nude beaches, or going to, there's a sex club in Toronto that has a clothing optional pool that's heated all year round. So that's one of my favorite places to to be out and have my body. And it's so healing as well to see other bodies of all types, and everybody's expressing and vulnerable in the same way. And the idea of the rope bunny and the rigger, that seems like something that's actually very coupled, but there's so many ways that you can wear rope as a corset under your regular clothing, that you can just learn about how the different textures feel for you. So we, in our practice, we ask sisters to do this with me, which I'll show you. But we use everything from satin ribbons to rope to scarves to elastic, and we experiment with the feeling of wrapping ourselves with different textures. And that can include things like sensory weighted blankets, or elastic swings that you can like absolutely curl up into, the ones that are frequently used for like aerial yoga. There's also blankets you can add to your bed that create that compression feeling. And we know that all of these things are great aids for adding healing into our body. They're often used with people who have autism, ADHD, because it helps us non-neurotypical people to become embodied, and it will be very helpful for anyone who wants to go through those sensations and add those sensations um, to their own sexual pleasure or embodiment.
And it's also a great way to get embodied if we're in our head all the time, or if we don't have easy access to our body. Some people just don't feel very easily. Like if you ask them to feel their body, they're like, what? Like, where do I start? Adding these extra sensations or our smell or whatever it is will help us to actually stay connected to our body in that practice or during the day. If we're,
Yes.
yeah.
So even adding one of these practices to your self-touch routine is going to change everything for you, and really we tend to get into a routine of like, oh, I'll touch myself this way, that way, and then I'm going to have an orgasm and fall asleep. And so if you really know that these are areas you want to explore, a simple thing like adding a rope corset to yourself beforehand, and the practice of wrapping and binding before you're doing the same touching routine even, is going to change your experience, and it's going to open up and give you access to these same healing practices. And you can do it 100% with yourself. I mean, we hear this a lot in sort of mainstream media. They're like, oh, have a candle and have a little bit of massage oil, and your self pleasure will be vastly different. But imagine if you went, 3 steps further and added latex, or, the rope, or we're going to add a gag on your throat, or you're going to, like, there's so many different things that you can do that are easy and safe, and with things that are already in your house. But it just takes the initiative and the desire to want to go there with yourself.
So we're going to go there with you right now. You're going to guide us through a self-love binding practice. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so studies have shown that when we add um, our body into our manifestations or into our affirmations, it really helps to ground and root and attach what we're saying and what we're thinking and what we're manifesting into our present reality. So we want to embody all of our senses, as many of our senses as possible, when we're manifesting. So you might have been instructed before to like smell what your dream smells like, taste what it tastes like, feels like what it feels like. So we're using that same practice, and we're going to be using rope or whatever you have handy. You can, I invite you to do this yourself on the replay once you have a chance to grab something. And I'm just going to guide you through some self-love affirmations. And while I do that, I'm going to be wrapping myself as a symbol, and also to feel attaching these statements of worthiness into my own body. For an extra challenge, if you have a body part that you are feeling you neglect or you criticize, you wrap that piece of your body today. But just for this demonstration, I'll just be doing my hand because it's what you can see. All right, so we will begin. So I'm going to go through all of the affirmations once with just my voice. And then the second time I'll go through them, I will leave space for you to repeat them out loud. And Clarity won't be repeating them out loud because we'll leave a blank space for you to be able to hear your own voice doing your affirmations. So we'll start now with a deep breath first. One more deep breath from the diaphragm upward, then into the lungs, holding and release. And we're ready to begin. I surrender to bliss. I am a temple of joy. I give myself permission to embody pleasure. I am safe and surrounded in love. I am worthy of my love. It is safe to express my desires. My body is beautiful, strong, sexy, and capable. I am a goddess available for worship. Breath in and out. Feel them rooted into your body. And now we'll do it together. I surrender to bliss. I am a temple of joy. I give myself permission to embody pleasure. I am safe and surrounded in love. I am worthy of my love. It is safe to express my desires. My body is beautiful, strong, sexy, and capable. I am a goddess available for worship. Deep breath in again, rooting these love for yourself into your body, feeling the energy moving from the top to bottom, right into your sacral. Hold it there. One more deep breath and release. And release your binding. Feel that sensation as you let the binding undo, the tension come out. Last breath in and out. There we go. Well done.
Wow, it's so amazing. It's such a simple practice, and yet I feel emotions come up for me. There's some affirmations that bring more emotions than others that are like charged with this like hesitation. Oh, really? Like, am I going there right now? Like, I don't know if I can feel this really in my body. And then I think just I can feel how my body is holding things too.
That's
So
a really
those
great
different.
example. A really great example of those, how you've touched on a little bit of a hot spot. And now you know, okay, when I'm feeling ready, I'm going to go play with that fire a little bit more.
And I just feel like I want to touch my body more lovingly, because even though it was binding, it was loving. It was just bringing attention to those places in my body that I usually just use to function. Use to do things without really using them for myself to love myself. So yeah, it's such a beautiful practice. I love that. And yeah, I imagine that someone might continue to explore with that and just bind their whole body and continue with their own affirmations, or perhaps record themselves with their affirmations, or just replay your affirmations and over to go deeper into those emotions and leave more space for the feeling part as well as the
Yeah, this
affirmation.
is a really great practice. It sounds so simple, but if you change the body part, if you change the affirmation, if you change the texture or the intensity of your wrap, you're going to start to see so many different results just by those small, subtle changes. And it's going to be a really great eye opener to places you haven't explored yet and that you would like to work on and love on.
I did some conscious kink workshops in Nicaragua. And I find that this constriction at the throat can be so arousing. And yet, so many women, especially, find that it's really hard for them to open their throat, and some men too, right? So, there's this kind of blockage area that can be activated through pleasure, but through binding. Do you have something to tell us about that?
This one actually is an area I can't go there myself, but so I don't have any personal experience with it because it is an area I'm too triggered by. But that's a sign that that's one of my red heart hot fires, and I am aiming to work towards it. So one of the first steps I'm working on is by wearing a collar during certain times of play to signify to my throat chakra that it is okay to speak up and that this is a time of play, and start to train my body to know that this is associated with a pleasurable time. The sensation of having something near my throat is safe and pleasurable. So I guess I kind of speak to it in this in the sense of like feeling avoidant of it and how I'm working towards that. But it's definitely an area of the tightness in the chakra and the not being able to speak is so common, and we sometimes need to work with preventing the feeling of prevention in order to liberate it, if that makes any sense. So yeah,
Yeah.
you might want to do work with the restriction in order to allow the voice to come out. And this is so common with women not even being able to like express their own pleasurable noises and that come natural to them. We suppress a lot of that, and it includes as well, the ability to speak up for yourself, to ask for what you want and all of that stuff. So it's totally all linked.
I love that. This paradoxes and how these can be healing to do the opposite so that we can eventually feel the liberation and just bringing awareness to something, bringing love, bringing intention to these parts of our body, to these zones, because this is not just a body part. Like there's a function to it, just like every body part has a symbolic meaning behind. So there's so much potential to explore ourselves, to heal ourselves, to play, to experience pleasure, and to liberate a lot of energy that was otherwise trapped. And I want to end with this study that I think you told me about this. Or no, I think I was researching how people who practice kink and BDSM are shown to be something like 60% more confident than most other people who don't. So that I think it really shows how it can affect our life in a positive sense of expanding our comfort zones to just be more, allowing ourselves to speak up for what we want, what we don't want, and to just be more grounded in who we are in our body and in this life with all it has to offer, all the pleasure and all the kinks.
Yeah, I
Kinky
definitely see
pleasure.
how that would be the case because I feel another benefit you get from kink in your daily life is you really learn to attune to the energies of a room, of a person, of yourself. You can sort of read a room and understand what is required to move towards your goal, towards your purpose, towards just feeling confident. I definitely think I see that in myself and a lot of other people who work with this space as well, that it does impact how you walk through the world.
I see that in you too. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us today and taking us into that secret little world that hopefully gets more exposed in a conscious way and reclaimed for good intentions. Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank
And
you for
I'm really
having me.
excited to co-create with you in Toronto during some workshops. I would love to have you lead some practices for live events here in Toronto as well.
I'm very
It's gonna be a
excited to
treat.
do this work in person finally. The
And if people listening would like sessions with you, they can find you on
best
on
place to reach
Instagram.
me probably is my Instagram. You can just
Okay,
send a personal message, and it's
I'll tag
at
you.
Sylvia Eng, SylviaEng, all one word on Instagram.
Yes, if you want a Sacred Kink mentor, I definitely recommend Sylvia and her sessions. Thank you again so much, sister, and have a beautiful new moon in Taurus.
Thank you, everybody. It's so nice to be here.